Hi, and welcome to What's the Worst That Could Happen. I'm Abby Whitaker, your host, and today I've got the lovely Jaymee Morrison from town coming to talk all things business with us. I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Yep, so my name's Jaymee. I am 32 years old and I'm from the Sunshine Coast, originally from Sydney, but moved up here about 13 years ago. I've been with town now for the last 18 months, I would say. I mean, it's always been our business, but prior to that, I was at UE Insurance and I spent most of my career there for 13 years.
Amazing. So what was your role and responsibilities at UE?
Yeah, so I started when I was 18 as a sales advisor. So I was doing university at the time. I was also working at Supre at the Plaza because that was the place to be, obviously, when you were 17, 18. And the bachelor that I was doing, I had some people applying for roles to work at Supre that had completed that. And I always loved school, but when I went to uni, it didn't really connect well with me. So I decided to put that on hold for a while. And I actually saw some people coming in and with their UE t-shirts. And at the time, UE was on School Road in Maroochydore. It was just a really small business. When I say small, it was only 200 employees at the time. But in comparison to the size it is now, it was small. So I used to see them coming in and out of the plaza, and my dad owned his own business back then that was in Sydney, but he had a couple of cars, had a couple of properties, and I remember him telling me a story about how he inquired, went to go start a quote online. At UE, we generally don't let you finish a quote online, and he got a call from a sales advisor just about this one car, but they ended up selling him everything. They sold him all of his policies and got everything on board. And I just remember thinking, oh, you know what? I think I could do that. So I put my university degree on hold to try and figure out what I was doing. And I applied for a job at UE. It's pretty funny when I look back at it now because at the time I was the youngest employed and I'd sent through my resume and it was in pink writing. I think I had Curls MT as my name at the top. And the recruiter who I ended up being good friends with said she was just going through resumes that day. She said, look, I'm going to give this girl 2 minutes and if she doesn't impress me, I'm just going to wrap up the call. Phone call ended up going for about 50 minutes. I did get an interview and I ended up securing a job as a sales advisor. I went into a new team at the time and we were sitting in a room in induction and we're all going around and everyone had to kind of say what they did previously. And for me, I was the Supre girl, but I had real estate agents in there. I had ex-car salesmen, obviously a lot of insurance people as well coming in there. So I think from being a young girl and having no experience, that was a big thing for me going into that industry. And everyone probably looked at me thinking, what the hell is she doing here? But within the first couple of months, I was UE's top performing sales advisor and I held that position there for about 13 months in a row. And then they asked me to step into my first leadership position. So they were employing a lot of new teams at the time and I stood in as a sales team manager. I was successful in that role. I ended up being a sales team manager for a couple of years then. And in the end there for the last 2.5 years, we were the top sales performing team. So then I think I was around 21 at the time. I then stepped into sales operations. So that's now managing a team of about 66. So 6 team managers, 6 teams underneath. Again, did love that role, loved working in sales. I think I'm naturally a salesperson at heart. Spent a couple of years in there and I got the opportunity to head down to our claims space. So the CEO had approached me at the time and said, I would love for you to learn, more about this side of the business and we're looking for someone to come across with a bit of sales experience. This was for our claims recovery space. And my first question was, what's recoveries? So he took me through what their plan was and I took that opportunity and I went and delved into the claims side of the business where I then spent another 7 years of my career. So I started in claims recoveries, moved across to settlements and then ended up being the head of recoveries and settlements. So now looking after a team of about 100. And then in my last couple of years there, we also started looking after investigations. So just grew into that position. I always loved that company. I never really thought I would leave, but about 2 years ago now, I had my daughter, Remy, and I was just looking for some more flexibility. And luckily enough, my husband has a couple of businesses that I could jump into, and the business at the time probably needed me as well if we were going to grow any further. So it was a good opportunity to try something different.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And so then you moved into your role within Town, and what is your role?
So I'm the general manager at Town, and the best way I can kind of explain it is, so Craig, my husband, he's the director. He's also our leading sales agent, and because he's quite busy, it gives him limited time to work on the business. So my role at Town is to work on the business while he remains working in the business.
Amazing. That's cool. And so like technically you're a co-owner.
Yeah. Like I've been around ever since Town was created, and initially we didn't have the vision in mind of running, I guess, the largest real estate business on the coast, but it just kind of naturally grew into that. And yeah, like that, I think we're at a bit of a turning point where Craig could either stay at the size he was with Town or bring somebody else into the business to run it, and we decided, let's do it. We've got the opportunity there. We've got agents knocking on the door to come and join us. Let's see what we can do with this thing.
Amazing. And have you had any roadblocks working alongside your partner?
Husband? Yeah. I kind of feel like I've always worked at Town, to be honest with you. I think I would like finish my job at U for the day and come home and we would just talk Town or whatever business venture he really had on the play or going on there. So I don't feel like it has. I think that's always just been a part of our relationship. I mean, there's always ups and downs or disagreements or anything like that, but because we've always spoken about business, I've always been heavily involved. It's not like I've come in cold and now we're all of a sudden working together. I've seemed to have always had influence over decisions from an early stage.
Amazing. That's great that you, obviously there's like a mutual respect there where he respects like your opinions on things and you respect that he maybe has the final call.
Yeah, I think he's like the visionary, and I think he's always, very entrepreneurial. He's always had companies himself. He's always worked for himself. And I am, like, the best way I explain this to people, he's very like CEO minded, where he has that vision and he can see all the big picture, and I'm very COO and I can come in and put all the daily operations into play, all the processes, all the governance, all that kind of stuff that he doesn't really. It's not that he doesn't like, but he maybe he just doesn't prioritize and whatnot.
I totally understand. I'm a Craig. I like have my people for systems and processes and like that stuff, and I can kind of like zoom out and see more of a bigger picture. Yeah. So I totally get that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I think we've always kind of paired well like that. So whatever we were going to do, it's kind of, we knew that what his strengths were maybe my weaknesses and vice versa.
Amazing. And so since you've come on board, how has that like worked for you? How have you slotted in? Obviously you've taken on more working in the business rather than on the business, which is awesome. How has that looked for you in terms of going from UE, having a child, and then kind of, I guess, finding an identity in a new business?
Yeah, that's a really big question, and I think that was probably the biggest journey that I've ever been on so far, and that obviously started with having Remy. So I had spent 13 years in corporate world, so very structured, very organized, highly productive, high pressure environments, and that's where I used to thrive, right? I love that organized chaos, I would say. Like, I love to be able to have all of those busy deadlines and all of these things to do, but also organize it in a way where I can get through it with a lot of structure. And then obviously jumping into being a new mum, it's chaos, but it's definitely not organized, right? So I think that for me was probably the biggest struggle I've had to date was becoming a new mum. And I really underestimated it as well. We'd spent a lot of time trying to get pregnant that I didn't really consider what I needed to prepare myself for after having a baby. And I kind of just thought, well, everybody like does it, like how hard can it be? But for me particularly, type A personality likes all of that structure and organization, and also probably I put a lot of my self-worth on my productivity as well, or I definitely used to. having a baby and now, like, I remember those first couple of days at home, I was kind of like, what is my life anymore? And that was the biggest shock for me. And it took me a year at least, I reckon, to kind of get through that. I didn't go back to, I would say, work or like physically in an office until around 8 months, I would say, with Remy. In hindsight, I probably should have gone a little bit sooner. But yeah, I didn't really, at that stage, I was still on maternity leave with Yui. I didn't really know what I was going to do. And I just wanted to kind of just dip my feet into it slowly. And I was still really struggling. I suffered with postpartum anxiety massively. And for me, that was the first time I'd ever had any form of anxiety in my life, and this big identity shift too. So that was crazy. And now trying to then jump from a corporate life into, I guess, small to medium sized business, and also being the owner essentially, rather than having a big team to support you. So I was used to pretty senior roles obviously at UE, but we always had a big support system around us. You know, if we needed finance, we had a finance team. If we needed accounting, if we needed marketing, whatever we needed, we kind of had it at our disposal. To now wearing all of those hats in the business too. But it was also a very exciting opportunity for us. We were, as I said, we're kind of at a real pivotal part in our growth story, I think, for town. And the first thing I kind of did was I sat down with the team and we went through a bit of an exercise to figure out, I mean, there's obviously 2,000, maybe even more things that we could have done, but obviously that's not achievable. We wouldn't have been able to do all of them. So the first thing we wanted to do was sit down and figure out, I wanted to know what, I guess, the key issues were. What did they like? What did they dislike? What were our goals? And if we were going to achieve that, what did we need to do in order to do that? And then I guess Craig and I took all of that feedback and turned it into a bit of a business plan for what we were going to roll out in the next year. And that's what we've done year after year now. We're kind of on our second iteration of that to give me some structure. And I guess that was really cool because I got to take a lot of things, what I've learned from Yui, and now apply it into this role and kind of make it my own and be solely responsible for the outcome of these things, which is amazing. And yeah, we've pretty much tripled the size of our business as far as employee wise, and we're now the leading agency on the Sunshine Coast as far as sales volume, and we're not the biggest agency in size, and that's never to be our goal. We don't want to be the biggest, but we do want to be the best.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think, I mean, I haven't personally worked with you. I've been on your website and gotten a property valuation, which I was very impressed with.
Nice.
But from following along your journey and Town's journey as well, it feels like a very innovative company and I'm not sure if it's just since you've taken over these last few years, but it seems like you're really involved with community events and that kind of thing. How have you, like, what part of those has been like you implementing?
Yeah, like I think community is something that's always been really important to me. It was something that I used to do within UE as well. So some of the partners that we work with now, such as Sunny Kids, was something that I used to work very closely with at UE. And when I came into town, like obviously everybody's, I guess, impression of a real estate agent isn't quite positive anyway. And I always think if you're doing well, I think you need to give back to the local community that you're working in. So I really, the team was also very on board with that too as well though. So I think we floated that idea. They were interested to get involved and we kind of put together a few partnerships that we were going to work on based on who we'd worked with in the past, and I guess what the team was passionate about as well, because we needed their buy-in obviously too. So yeah, that's been a massive pillar for us. We have about 5 pillars that we work through each year as far as strategic initiatives, and community focus is massive for us. We started a community fund where every sale now that Town makes, a certain portion will come out from the commission of what the sales agent earns, and Town matches that dollar for dollar. And we choose now community partners that we work with to support, so to give them a nice healthy amount to support some of their initiatives for the year.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. So those pillars that you talking about, are they kind of like your values?
There's some are values led, but some are also more strategic, I would say.
Yeah, amazing. Cool. And how did you find, so when you worked at UE, and I actually don't know the answer to this, but you obviously started, like you said, as quite young.
Yeah.
Even when you were like, had moved up so much at 21, I was like thinking, man, most of us were just rolling on the grass, drunk at this point. But how did you find that transition? How did you find that corporate role as well in terms of even things like gender? Were you a minority as a female?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's changed a little bit now, but there's still a long way to go in financial services. And definitely back then at UE, our ratio even of sales agents was low male to female. And especially then that trickles into sales leadership. We did have a philosophy back when I started that we only promoted from within. So you had to actually start in those roles before you could do those roles. That's changed slightly now for most roles, but it definitely was in play back then. So if we didn't even get females entering the door and lasting as a sales agent, then they wouldn't make it to a team leader stage. And if they didn't last as a team leader, then they're definitely not going to make it into operations. So that obviously dwindled off quite a lot as you get up to those roles. So yeah, it was difficult at the time. I remember even coming in to the sales role and from that moment we've spoken about in training where we were going around and I could see what everyone was thinking when they were looking at this young blonde female that has come from Supre now starting at the same role that they're starting at. But I think I just tell myself, and I don't like the words fake it till you make it, but I just had to believe it till I achieved it.
Yeah. I like believe it till I achieve it.
Yeah, that's good. It's a lot better way to say it.
Yeah, totally. That's incredible. And then how have you found then obviously like you're coming into like a higher role considering it's your business with Town, but have you found that what's that ratio like there?
So again, it was heavily male dominated. I'd say we had one female agent at the time and two of our admin were female and then myself. And then if there was a few associates maybe floating around, but now that's completely changed. I would say we're fairly even now as like if you're looking at the whole business, including our admin resources across all teams, our associates, etc. We've got a heavy stack of female. And I think that's it's not that Craig had, I guess, wanted to have a predominantly males in the business, but given it's a sales industry, again, more of a male-dominated industry typically, and it was a little bit of a boys' club, I would say. That's definitely the mentality that we had back then, but we've since kind of broken that and gone away from that, and I think that will only help us in attracting and retaining talent in the future. I think, like to answer both of those questions, in any of the roles that I've had, there's always been people that are going to doubt you, but it's just about kind of believing in yourself and staying true to yourself, I would say. And I think over time, if you can show them what you're capable of, then people will follow you. So if you lead and you lead right, people will follow. Yeah.
I could imagine that would have been really tough when you were first coming into that UE role. You were not only female, but also young.
Yeah.
And then also like, you know, blonde.
Yeah. No,
you know, like
totally
I feel
fair.
like it's like was there times there where you were just like, this is a bit messed up?
A lot of the times, yeah. A lot of the times. I remember any time I've been promoted or taken that next step, there was times in that first period where I really doubted myself and didn't know if I could do it, but I just had to kind of push through and have some good people surrounding me, I think, like some really good mentors in my life. But yeah, absolutely. And like there's still, I'm sure it was like that at Town as well. And it probably even more so because it's the token wife joining the business, not just
so you're
not
like,
just been cold hired, you know what I mean?
Totally.
I've gone through an interview process, but now the wife's joining maybe because she's just the wife. But I just had to really believe that I've been put in these positions because I've worked hard and that I've got the skills and the ability for it. And I think when I was younger, that imposter syndrome definitely used to creep in quite a bit. It's gotten better as I've become older, but there's always times where I'm like, oh, am I in the right place right now?
Yeah, totally. What would be your advice to overcoming that imposter syndrome?
It's difficult. It's definitely difficult, but I think you need to, like we're so hard on ourselves, like harder on ourselves than what other people would probably be viewing us at as anyway. And I literally had this conversation earlier on in the week with one of the females in our team. And I think from the outside in, you wouldn't even know or guess at all that there's any imposter syndrome there. But we started to break down a little bit of those walls there, and she'd opened up about some imposter syndrome. And it's just incredible that like somebody of that caliber could still think that they're not meant to be where they are right now. And I think it's just about taking a step back and actually having a look at what your strengths but also your weaknesses are. Like it's good to be aware of what they are, right?
Totally.
And see them as opportunities and know that you can work towards them.
Yeah, totally. I heard recently somewhere that someone was saying that they thought imposter syndrome was just there when people, it was like unpopular opinion, like imposter syndrome is just when you know that you're like being fake, basically.
Yep.
What do you think about that?
I don't think that's real at all. I think it is quite a real thing for people, and I don't think it's down to authenticity. I think it's just doubt that creeps in your mind, and that's, has a lot to do with like the social norms, I guess, and I guess the pressure that probably women put in on themselves in particular. Like one study that I love about imposter syndrome, particularly in women, is that men will look at a job position, right, and they'll see 2 out of the 10 things on the skills list that they match, and they go, oh yeah, I'll apply for this job. Whereas a woman will look at it and see 9 out of 10 things, and she'll go, oh, I'm actually missing that one thing.
Yeah, that's a great explanation, actually.
And that's what holds a lot of women back, right? Because it's not just that men are better essentially, but more men are applying for these roles because they're looking at that and going, oh yeah, I'll just throw my hat in the ring. But the woman's like, oh, I'm missing that one thing, I just won't even apply.
Yeah.
But if she did, she'd probably see that she had 7 more things than the men that applied.
It's almost like a confidence thing.
It's a confidence thing. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And it probably comes down to, because I have been in corporate and I did experience that kind of gender situation. But since I've had businesses, been on the coast, been in business, I don't know if I'm just blind to it, but I haven't personally experienced like anything like that.
Yeah.
I am in a very female dominated industry.
Yeah.
With Pilates. But yeah, I haven't really noticed it, but I think that a lot of people that I know who are powerful women talk about it, and even just looking at statistics and pay gaps and all that kind of thing. Yeah. It's definitely a real thing.
Yeah. And I definitely think it does come down to confidence, even out of the people that I have led in the past that have gone for promotions or whatnot. The boys are always ready before they're ready, and the girls are ready before they apply.
Yeah.
Or apply themselves.
Yeah. They're over-prepared.
Yeah. They're over-prepared almost. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, cool. So basically, since you've come into town, you sort of transformed that. Not fully transformed, because it sounds like it was a great business before you came in, but you've kind of made some tweaks, I suppose, within the team, which is so important to have that great team culture.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're fully respected now as in your role?
It's a really great question, and I think you'd probably have to ask the staff that. I definitely think that I am more respected now than I was maybe coming in, and I think that probably just comes down to integrity and having that time to basically not just say things but show that I'll do things that I say I'll do. So I think over time that confidence has built up, and that's where it really comes from, right? We talk about confidence and these imposter syndromes, but it's just about sometimes just giving it time to show, hey, I'm not just going to say this, I'm actually going to do it as well. And then that will breed confidence in the team. Like I definitely think there might be still some people in the team that have like legacy potentially that might not think that it's my place there, but I think that I've definitely come a long way in that space.
Amazing. And how big is the team there?
So we've got 28 of us now.
Amazing.
Yes, I think that's about 14 agents, maybe up to 16, and then the rest are either support or admin or associates.
And your Town mostly buys and sells.
Yeah.
Well, buys houses for people and sells houses for people.
Not buys, but
people in buying.
Yeah, assist people in buying or selling. We dabble in a little bit of commercial, mostly residential. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, cool. And what have you found throughout your journey, like through your career?
Yeah.
What have you found have been some real challenges or learnings that you face? I know we've kind of probably touched on some of them already.
Yep.
But yeah, what have
I mean, there's been lots. And I think you learn the most when you're failing, right? Mm-hmm. So I think if you are failing, don't beat yourself up too much about it, because that's where you are going to learn. And if you're willing to learn and you're willing to grow from that failure, then you will catapult, I think. So I think in all my leadership positions, so I came in obviously as a salesperson, and I kind of went straight to the top with sales because that was a natural thing for me. I could sell, and I'm very competitive. So we had like a system back then where you could see what everybody was earning. Mm-hmm. And I remember my manager kind of sat me down when we were new, and he's like, right, here's our pay structure, and where do you want to sit? And I'm like, see this person, I want to be here, like the number one. Mm-hmm. That kind of came real natural to me, and I didn't really have many setbacks in there or learnings. My biggest learning came to me when I started as a team manager, and I think I was 19 at the time, and I had a team of 10. I didn't hire this team as well, so they had already pre-hired the team. They were brand new, but I hadn't been involved in the recruitment process. So the first time I met them was in induction, and they were starting in my team. Like, they didn't really get any say in it. They hadn't really met me before. Yeah. And that was it. So I kind of thought, well, I can sell. I just need to teach people how to do what I need to do, right? Or what I do, or what I say on the phones. And that was a big learning for me, because not everybody sells the same way. Not everybody does anything the same way, right? So for me, I had to kind of like go all the way back to the beginning and teach myself how to sell, because I didn't really know why I was so good at selling. Or how to like label parts of the sales process, I guess, or any of that sales psychology. I just innately knew it. Yeah. So I had to go. Just
because you're good at something doesn't mean that you're good at teaching it.
That's right. So I had to go back and learn how to teach it. And at the start of being a sales team manager, I was shit. I didn't do any good. My team wasn't performing. My team didn't like me. So I had to learn a lot in those times. And it was really challenging, because I was a top performer on the phones essentially. And I knew that I could make X amount of money just doing what I was doing by myself. I was now leading a team of 10 people who, let's just say half of them were disgruntled and half of them were okay, then none of them were happy. And now I had to learn how to basically teach these guys how to sell, and learn how to sell myself essentially, so I could teach them. So that was a really big learning for me. And I also learned a lot about leading people at the time as well. I'd kind of naturally been in leadership positions, whether that be like team leaders in a sport or anything like that in my life, but I'd never been in a proper leadership position before. And I always say, like, UE is better than any MBA or anything that you could do, because you just learn rawly like what it is you can and can't do. And in that corporate environment, you're held accountable for everything. You've got 360s, everything's measured, like your staff, there's multi-levels of management, so they can tell people like, what's going on, and everybody kind of knows about it. So you're under the microscope, and it's a really great learning environment. So I learn a lot about myself. I learn a lot about leading teams, and I learned a lot about how to actually sell. And through that failure, we became the best performing team. So whether that means I had to recruit new people or whatever it is, I had to learn all those facets of a team and what creates a top performing team. So that was a big learning curve for me at the time, and especially at such a young age, and with all of that doubt already cast on me, not just probably by everybody else around me, but also myself with the imposter syndrome. That was a big learning curve for me. And I say I went through that pretty much, like, not necessarily at every stage for as long as I did as a team manager, but in every position that I've been through, I've kind of had that period where I haven't been excelling especially to my expectations, and then I've had to learn and adapt and grow.
Yeah, totally. There's a learning curve with any growth, really. Yeah. And I guess it's kind of gets a bit boring if you just if it's just like smooth sailing.
Yeah,
it's not
it does.
Really linear. That's amazing. So with sales, because you speak about sales a lot with Yui, and obviously sales is a big part of a real estate business as well. What would be the top things that you think a salesperson, like a good salesperson, needs to have, whether they are like a innate thing or whether it's like a learnt thing?
Yeah.
Because I know with Pilates, like when we get new instructors in, well, I've got a Pilates training academy as well, but when we get instructors, there's certain things that can be taught, and then there's certain things that is just like part of who that person is.
Yeah.
And if they want to be like an amazing instructor, and they don't have some of these qualities, it's a lot more work. And even when they're right at the top, maybe they still don't have some of the qualities that would make someone else who hasn't worked as hard a better instructor than them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the same with salespeople, right? And I think that's probably the same with most roles, really. Like there's with the salespeople, and it's probably the same as what you were just talking about with Pilates. There's the 1%ers, right, where they walk into a room and you just know that they're going to do well. Like you just know. You meet them for the first time and they're charismatic, they resilient, like they don't seem to be, they're a bit unbothered by like negative feedback. And I think that's really important in a sales role, no matter what you're doing, whether it was somebody at Yui, you have to be able to take that rejection. So I think resilience is super important. I think charismatic. I think the best way, and me and Craig talk about this all the time with salespeople. We always just say, if you put them in a room, they're the person that you go to. They're the 1%ers that can control the room. Yeah. And they're rare. But with sales, and it's probably like Pilates, you can teach it to anyone. You're just going to have those people that have that innate ability to do those type of things are going to far exceed the others. But everybody can sell. Like you can teach people how to sell. Absolutely.
Yeah. And what would be the top 3 tips that you'd give someone in sales?
In sales, I think you need to like learn the sales process. I think that's been super key to, if I've coached anyone in sales before, if you're understanding the sales process. And it's the same whether I'm going to sell you water, I'm going to sell you this property, I'm going to sell you an insurance policy, whatever it may be. It's just a good understanding of the sales process. And it's always like this, people label it different things, but very quickly it's about building rapport with your client, establishing what their needs are, providing those solutions to those needs, overcoming any objections. And then that makes the easiest part, which most people focus on, is closing. Yeah. So
beautiful. I was going to ask you for the very basic version of that. You just gave it to us.
That is it. So it's, obviously there's layers that go in each of those things, but it generally needs to happen in that order. And the best way I can explain building rapport is if you're on a first date, right? And maybe, I don't know, you've met them on Tinder, or like it's someone set you up on this date or whatever it might be. And let's just say we're on a date today. If we come into the room, and it might be a little bit awkward at the start, but then if you say, oh, what did you get up to on the weekend? And I say, oh, well, I just went to a Pilates session and then I went for a walk, and you go, oh, Pilates. And then we've now started to build some sort of connection, right? Yeah. The conversation opens up a little bit more. You start to feel a little bit more at ease. And that's what building rapport is about. It's trying to find that piece that connects you with that other person.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And that's important, because the next part of the process is I'm going to find out what you need. Yeah. Like, why did you come to me today? What exactly are you looking for? What are your needs? And if I don't have those, then I can't provide you with the right solutions, right? I can't sell you what I'm selling. Or I'm going to give you the wrong solutions. Because there's probably many ways that my product, this house, this insurance policy can benefit people. But if I don't actually understand why you've called me today, or what property you're looking for, or why you're looking at a property in the first place, then I can't actually provide you with the right solutions.
I love that. And what about at that stage when you've heard their problems? And you know that you're not able to provide the solution?
Yeah, well, like and can you give me an example? Would that be like, this house isn't going to match for them?
Yeah, so like, I guess what I'm asking you is, what's your take on turning people away, even though you know that you could like sort of give a solution, but you know that maybe you're not the right fit for them?
Yeah, look, I think in the industries that I've worked in, and I think any sales industry pretty much, like for us, if it's not this house, well, then what other property can I help you source? Like even if I don't have anything in my portfolio right now that I've got online or it's coming to market or whatever it is, the best sales agents are trying to now find you that property. So if I've established that, you're newly expecting, you're going to be growing your family, you need to have bigger space or whatever it might be, and you know what, this property is not for you and I actually don't have anything online, then a good sales agent is actually going to continue to find out what it is you're looking for and is going to go find that for you.
Yeah, I love that.
With an insurance policy, I mean, it's unlikely that will be suited for, like, pretty much our actuarial department will be the only one that tells you that, or maybe our price if we completely outprice you for whatever reason. And there's always going to be people that aren't right for your product, right? You don't have 100% conversion ratio with whatever you're doing. So that's natural, and it's just about knowing. I think the best way to think of that is, like, if you, let's say, you convert on average 30% of your leads, well, you've just got one of the 70% out of the way, and your next person is potentially closer to that goal of achieving it.
Yeah, and I feel like, I guess when you were talking about that, I was like, I think in Pilates industry, because obviously I relate back to that, it can be a bit different, because I feel like when I realize that maybe we're not the right fit for someone, I'll send them to the right place. And I feel like that often builds trust between myself and the client. And then they might go away and they might refer me to someone else who might be the right fit. Or maybe when they've like rehabbed themselves to a point where they can come back, they're going to go back to my studio because
you've done the right thing. You haven't just forced them into this sale. And that's exactly right. Like, if we force someone into this property and you get in there and you have your second baby and now you don't fit, and all of a sudden you're not gonna call me to be a real estate agent. So I think in everything, and that comes back to that first kind of pillar in building that rapport and understanding that client. If you want long-term business, that's very important.
Okay, so stigmas with real estate agents.
Let's talk about
you
it.
Sort of like brought it up a little bit before.
And
it's interesting because my husband is looking at some new career path options. He's amazing at sales, but one of the things he was looking at was real estate. And some people are like, oh, you'd be great at that. Some people are like, oh, you're not really, like, you might not be hard-skinned enough for that. What are the stigmas around real estate agents? And is there any myths that you can...
Look, I think like I don't know what study it is, but we always hear real estate trainers talk about it, right? I think that and the used car salesman are probably the least trusted or valued role. And I think it's a bit of, it's probably a little bit like insurance, I guess. It's like a grudge purchase. Like, you don't want to have to pay your agent all this money at the end of the day. And I think sometimes the shiny cars and the suits and all that give off definitely the wrong impression, but they work bloody hard. And I think that's the trade-off. And I know that, obviously, being married to one before being in the industry, yes, he does write a lot of, it's GCI, so he does sell a lot of houses, but his trade-off for that is that's his life. People he's contacted at 10 p.m. at night, text messages, calls, whatever it might be. Like, you are on beck and call for people.
So would you say that for someone who wanted to go into real estate, that would be one of the things that they would need to be aware of?
I think if you want to grow, it depends what level of, I guess, how much you want to earn, because I think it's a really good platform to have a good life at any salary that you want to set yourself. There's a lot of people, I think, after maybe some of the TV shows, et cetera, around real estate that want to jump in and think it's just the be-all and end-all.
Surely we're not talking about, what's the...
Selling Sunset.
Sunset.
Stuff like that. So those type of TV shows. There was an Australian one as well. And, like, there's obviously $1 Million Listing, et cetera, too. But look, it is a very good career for that, but there is a lot of people trying to do it. So if you're good at sales and you can back yourself and you align yourself with a company that feels right for you, and also at the right stage of your career, because I think, town's not the right fit for every agent. There's a lot of great agencies around that are good for new people trying to cut their teeth, and it might not be us. I think it's just just kind of setting out what it is you want to achieve, like what are those goals, and understanding that those people who are driving those really fast, shiny cars are trading their life for it. And if that's what you're in for and that's the stage of your life that you're ready for, then go for it. If it's not, then you might need to reconsider.
Yeah. Is there an option that could be less of a trade-off? Like you could be fine with a bit of making a bit less money.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
having just like a Mazda.
There's plenty of agents like that. Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's not you don't necessarily have to have that as your kind of like your thing.
No, I think a lot of people that come into the industry though do, and they probably probably underestimate. And I think that comes back to that public perception question, like what actually goes into that, and that is grinding, right? With any business, it's exactly the same. But yeah, like there's definitely a lot of agents that you can earn a good wage and sell a few houses a year for sure.
Yeah, amazing. My grandparents actually, because I grew up in Africa.
Yeah, cool.
And they, obviously much before I was born, they both separately came to Africa from England.
Yeah.
And my grandma, after she'd had her 3 kids and my dad being one of them, she started a real estate agent in Africa, which is still running today.
That's so cool.
She's not running it anymore, but
yeah,
obviously in those days and times as well, it was very not frowned upon, but just very weird for a woman to have a business like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really cool to like learn a little bit more about it and what goes into it, because I think sometimes people do relate real estate agents to used car salesmen.
Yeah.
And I actually think like even they are very different levels as well.
Yep.
And I don't really think that they I've had some really great chats with real estate people. I was having a chat with this one guy recently, and he was actually telling me about his job. I was just looking at a house with my father-in-law, but he was like telling me how there was a lot of real estate agents that came into the industry just before COVID.
Yeah.
And then obviously COVID was almost like someone just threw money in the air and everyone just picked it up as fast as they could in that industry. And he said that there'd been a lot of them leave.
Yeah.
In the last like a mass exodus in the last like year or so.
That's true. I think that there's a lot of like real estate trainers that call them the COVID agents, and that was just because couldn't keep up with the stock that was moving, right? So people just jumped on board, and it wasn't really much selling involved in that process. It was just order taking, right? You sold a property, got it online, and you'd be getting 20 offers and you just choose one. It's definitely not like that anymore, but it's not like that's the abnormal thing. COVID was the abnormal thing. We're just back to a normal market now.
Yeah, totally. So what is going on in the real estate market at the moment?
I think the Sunshine Coast is steady. And I know I can only speak really from what we're seeing within our own agency, but we're back to a normal market, but it is steady. And there are still people getting good prices for good stock there, especially when it is so expensive now to build. I think, one of Craig's predictions for the year was that the good stock that's already built and established is going to do really well this year, because it's just the build prices are crazy still. Yeah.
And do you does he or you foresee the build prices going down?
Look, I hope so. I think there was something that got shared around by a big trainer in Sydney, and we're one of the highest in the world for build costs at the moment. So I would only hope so, but that's really going to depend, I think, on the trades.
Yeah, we've just, we're doing a reno on our place at the moment, and we got a few quotes and we were blown away. And
it's crazy, right?
Some of my husband's friends were like, well, it's just because there's so much work.
Yeah, and they can choose.
They can just choose. They can just throw out a number and just be like, well, if they don't pay, we just
100%. That's what's going on. So I think it's really just going to come down to when it starts to get a bit tighter for the trades, and the first people to sharpen their tools and go lower on their prices will make that change, I guess.
Yeah. And what about we hear a lot about interest rates and stuff, what's on the bingo card for interest rates for homes in the next couple of years?
Yeah, look, I think we've obviously had our first reduction in interest rates, but they did say that Like we don't foresee that there's going to be more for a while. But in saying that, I don't think it's going to go up any further. So I'm thinking it'll steady out on what it is and then hopefully go down in the future. I mean, we hope that as well for our own investments and stuff that we've got on the plan. So I can't really predict that, but it would really depend on how inflation continues to go and what happens.
Yeah, totally. And what about, I'm just asking all my personal questions now.
Yeah, go for it.
What about, so like fixed, this is my very basic knowledge, fixed versus, what's the other one?
Variable. Yeah.
We had we somehow, I don't know how, we got a very low fixed interest rate
Nice.
in 2021. And are we seeing mainly variable now?
I have no idea. So we don't get involved in the lending side of things. So I could only answer you from a personal level. But yeah, I probably am not the right person to give you information on that.
Okay. I do have a question I think you would be great at giving information on.
Thank you.
Where do you think, what's the hot spots on the Sunshine Coast?
Oh, that's very good. Craig predicted Golden Beach as his hotspot for the year when we were doing a bit of a 2025 thing for my weekly preview. Look, I think Mooloolaba. I think the Mooloolaba dry areas has got so much to pick up. There's obviously that big redevelopment of the foreshore that's planned and started. That and the Aria building that's going down at the end. I think Mooloolaba is going to have a complete transformation and those houses and properties in there are going to be worth a lot. It's the centre of the coast. It's beautiful. It's one of Australia's / the world's best beaches. And yeah, I think it's undervalued for what it is now.
Yeah, cool. I feel like Golden Beach, when we were looking to buy, was like really popping off.
Yeah.
And when we first moved to the coast, we opened our first studio in Caloundra.
Yeah.
Because when I walked into Caloundra, it wasn't where we thought we were going to go.
Yeah.
We'd been living in Marcoola. We walked into Caloundra and I was like, wait, this is like not just old people. Like I feel like this is a good spot.
Yeah.
And it is, and even like the commercial real estate there has gone up significantly in the last 7 years. But yeah, Golden Beach, interesting. I actually really love Sippy Downs.
Yeah. It's super central.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's where the UE building was. So there's a lot of like infrastructure around it. You've got the university as well. So it's always going to be a good investment long term because even if you don't live there, it's a good rental opportunity for those businesses or the schools around it that support that system. So I think Sippy's always a good choice, particularly for investors. Golden Beach was on the radar because of the Aura development and how far that's extending, and that Golden Beach is like the beach version of that, right? So that's why that's predicted as to be a bit of a hotspot with all the stuff that's Stockland's doing down there at Aura.
Yeah, totally. And I suppose because there's like some kind of highway, it's also the closest
to Brisbane
as well.
Yeah.
What about for young families with a budget, say, below $1 million?
Yep.
Where are they going?
So we've got a couple of agents, I guess, that specialise in that, and that would be Cassie Kennedy, who sells down in our Aura area, so Baringa and surrounds, and then we've also got Soph and Chris, who sell in our Palmwoods kind of Harmony areas as well. So they're kind of our main spots there. But sub under $1 million, you can also look out near like your Woombai Palmwoods. There's still some stock going on there. We don't have any agents in Bly, so I haven't been fully aware of what's going in the Bly market, but I personally like Bly as well. Like I think it's such a big suburb. It's got a lot to offer. Yeah, it's really good. I'd love to get an agent in Bly.
It's so close to Maroochydore.
It is. It's very close to Maroochydore.
If anyone really wants to be an agent in Bly.
Yeah, exactly. Contact me. But yeah, I think it's a bit of an untapped market there as well. From our perspective, we would love to get into there. And their parks are so good. Their parks are really good. I've taken my daughter there a few times and I love it.
Yeah, I feel like, I guess those are all kind of like housing development areas, but I feel like Bly is probably a little bit less far out than maybe Aura or something.
Yeah, so like you've got like your Palm View in the middle there, so your Harmony area, so that's kind of like the middle, obviously then Caloundra's down the south, and then you would say Bly is the northern part of where that would reach to.
Yeah, totally. What about property, like bigger properties?
Bigger properties for sub $1 million?
Or just like best areas for...
Best
if
areas?
you want a bit more land, maybe you're like in the 1.5 million range.
Yeah, I would say like your Palm Woods and your Woombye areas. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. There we go. We heard it here first. We were looking in Tanawa
Yep.
for a while.
Yep.
Beautiful properties.
Tanawa's amazing. Yeah. It's getting quite expensive now in Tanawa though.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is really nice there. And quite close to like Budrum.
Definitely. Yeah. Craig grew up in that area. That's where he spent a lot of time as a kid. And yeah, it's a really nice area.
Yeah, nice. Okay, perfect. So in terms of for anyone looking to move and like any, I guess maybe we could like target young girls or boys or whatever.
Yeah.
Looking to get into a sales role, real estate role, even someone wanting to transition from being a real estate to owning a real estate business. What are some tips that you'd give them?
So let's start, I guess, with the sales role. So if you're looking to come into real estate, so you're starting maybe cold, you hadn't had any experience before, my biggest recommendation is to try and find a good agent who you can align with and shares the same values as you and learn from them. That's the best way to do it.
So get them to mentor you?
Become their associate.
Okay.
So generally, the agents that write a fair amount of volume will have an associate, at least one, and that's always the best pathway to a really successful career, to spend a few years as a sales associate and then to go out on your own.
So is that like an apprentice?
Pretty much, yeah. So they all have like different arrangements, I guess, depending on what company you work for and what agent that is. But generally speaking, you would have some form of a salary and then a percentage of the overall commission that's written in that team. So that's obviously the most secure way to go out, because you have that security of a salary there, or at least a split that somebody else is already established and writing. But you're also going to learn from the best people in the industry.
Yeah, amazing. So for someone wanting to do that, would you recommend, like, how do you do that? So say there would be someone on your team who's kind of like their associate has moved up.
Yep, they've
and
either
they're looking.
Yep, so they either become their own agent, or like recently we've just hired this week actually a sales associate role, and this person, her current sales associate, is moving overseas. So we advertised for that role, and yeah, we basically, in this one particular one, we did want a bit of experience because it's a team of 3, but that's definitely not to say we met the right person with the right values, I guess, and yeah, they interviewed really well and understood what sales was about, that we wouldn't have put them in that position.
Yeah, okay.
We absolutely would have considered that. We were lucky enough to get a real high caliber of applicants this time around, but we've definitely hired people that don't have experience before.
Yeah, okay. So the process is that these people that you interview, they need to fit into the overall team.
Yeah,
but then
for us,
they really need to align really closely with the intimate team that they're going into.
Yeah, so we operate a little bit differently at Town. We have contractors that work for us, so our agents are contractors. So technically you're employed by them, but for the sales associate roles, or whenever they're looking to grow their team, because they're still contracting to Town, we are involved in that process. Firstly, to help the agent, because just because they're now growing their team doesn't mean they've done interviews or anything in their previous careers before. So I always like to just help out and make sure that I am bringing some of that experience to the table. And then second of all, to make sure it's the right fit under the Town umbrella as well. So if they're going to essentially contract to us as well, we want to have some control over that too.
Okay, amazing. So the tip is find the right fit agency for you and also the right fit individual.
Absolutely.
To learn under.
Yeah, and there's so many different agencies on the coast that you will be able to find the right one.
Yeah, okay, amazing. I had a question for you and it just went out of my mind. Give me a second.
You're right.
I just can't remember. It's just gone. Okay, so what about an agent who wants to open their own
Agency. Yep. So I would just say, like, consider what are the reasons that you're doing it for. And, like, if you're a top performing agent, doesn't mean that you now can be a top performing business owner as well. And that's something to consider when making that step, because as an agent, you're kind of just looking after you, right? And you've got, yes, your own business that you're running with inside the business, but you're not having to look at all the other things, additional things that go with running your own business. So that's the first thing that I'll consider. But if you're really keen on that, then probably do some research and understand where your opportunities or your weaknesses are within that before you do make the jump. So at least you've got an understanding. You can maybe upskill yourself a little bit before you just dive into the deep end, because it is a different skill. Running a business and being a sales agent is a totally different skill. And I think back to, my own journey of just being a salesperson, then leading a team even, and I wasn't looking after all the finances that Yui was obviously undertaking at that point, but I was running a team, and that's two different skills. Two different skills.
Yeah. I see that in every industry, because it's like you get people who are passionate about something or really good at a role, and then they think, oh, this is so glamorous, I want to own my own business.
Yeah.
I'm going to have so much freedom and stuff, and they do it, and then it's like, well, hang on. You're not actually even using that skill that you're so passionate about anymore, because you're doing like marketing, finance,
trust accounting,
all these like roles that you have to do as a business owner, and it's just not for everyone.
No, it isn't. It isn't.
It's very what's the word? Sensuationalized?
Yeah.
Is that the word?
Yeah, I think I know what you're trying to say.
It's very like glamorized to own a business, and it's like, honey.
Yeah, no, I know.
It's not. That's not what
it is. I think, like, it's probably like, are you doing it just for the title, or are you doing it because you also want to undertake all those roles that you get when you become a business owner, right? And so I think that's really the hard question that you've got to ask yourself, because sometimes it is just easier to sit at a agency under a good brand and do what you do if that's your skill. But if you also want to either grow your skills and that's what you want to learn, and you're passionate about that, you're willing to put in the work, then go for it. But understand that it is different.
It is different. Yeah, totally. Since you started with Town, what do you find is like the most challenging part of the role?
I would say probably that I am wearing all hats and just trying to prioritize what we need to do, because there's like 2,000, as I said, things that we could do at any given point to become better, but it's just like adjusting those priorities. But not having that support that I'm used to in the corporate world. And that's like, it's a benefit, but it's also like a weakness, right? Yeah. It's also a struggle that I have sometimes, because I am used to having those smart people around me that are really skilled in whatever that may be, whether it is a trust accounting question for an accountant, or like the need a marketing team, or whoever that may be. Now trying to wear all of those hats and juggle those priorities is probably the biggest challenge, I would say. But then again, it is so exciting, because it means that you can kind of push in any direction that you want to.
Definitely. I find in a lot of times in businesses, the staff is the hardest part of it, but it sounds like you have a little bit of a different structure.
Yeah, kind of. So all our guys are definitely contractors, that's for sure, apart from the people that we employ to run, I guess, Town and support our contractors. But we definitely run them like a team, and that's always been super important to us. I think people are definitely always challenging, because there's never, like, people go through things in their life, right? There's never smooth sailing for everyone at every given point. You're managing real people. But I think that's something that over my years of being in leadership that I've probably just gotten used to, like just being a part of the job, and I actually really enjoy. But yeah, there's always people challenges that are going on, and we definitely have them, like on any given day. But it's also the most rewarding part of the job as well.
Yeah, I love that. Do you find that, so within your life now.
Yeah.
You mentioned before, like when we were off camera, that you're on the board for some local things. Like, what do you do outside of town and like just for your personal, I guess, personal career development and
Yep. So I a couple of years ago now, I was asked to join the board of the Sunshine Coast Business Women's Network. And at first that's when I kind of lived in imposter syndrome as well. I was like, what, me? The board as the secretary, like in charge of all governance and et cetera. But I did, and it's been amazing. It's been really good to work with a bunch of ladies who I don't obviously work with every day, but it's a non-for-profit business, so we don't get paid. Everything we do is just for the greater good, I guess, of the Business Women's Network, and it's really cool. That was a big opportunity for me and a big growth opportunity as well to kind of step into that role. And now I think I've been in that role for coming 3 years, and I'm like starting to come out of that imposter syndrome over the last year, and I'm starting to feel that real confidence again. So it's just like trying to find those opportunities where I can push myself and do that. I've always tried to find them. And one of my favorite quotes was, in anything that I've ever done is feel the fear and do it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that quote too.
Yeah, love it. So I try and find little moments like that where I can push myself and then just grow, right? Because now I've ticked it off and done it, right? So I do that outside of work. I mean, between the Business Women's Network, Town, we do have a couple of other businesses that we've always kind of got on the go. We've previously, like we started and we part-owned Pavilion. That was us. We sold out of that when we had Remy, where Craig's got the surf park development, which is Surf Farm. So we kind of dabble in that as well. Yeah, he's like...
That's in
he's
Markula,
real estate,
right?
No, that's in Moby Vicks. Like, yeah. So we own a big parcel of land out there where that will come under development soon, but like that, all of that kind of going around. So I'd say like business is definitely a passion of ours, and we're always trying to look for, well, not trying to look for, but thinking of new ideas. And I think we'll always have stuff like that on the go. And although Town will always be our baby, I think that we'll definitely have something else in us at some point in our lives, which is cool and exciting. But apart from that, like being a mum is obviously a big part of my life now. And I still, even though we're very busy at work, I still try and make a lot of time for her while she's young, because I know that we won't get those years back.
Yeah, totally. And I noticed that you're also very involved, like I mentioned earlier, in like community things. Town's often like sponsoring events, and I think even last year someone had asked me to be involved with an event, like a wellness event that you were a part of as well.
Yes, yeah, women's health event,
Yeah. So it's really cool that you get really involved in those things as well.
Yeah, I do. I like to just like do more in the community, or offer more to our local community. I think that's always been super important to me. Like I'd love to leave like a lasting impact or a legacy in whatever we do. Yeah,
I love that. Now, when we were emailing, because this is the first time we've met, it's funny that you say you're a type A, right? I think I'm a type B. But you were really wanting to know like what I would ask you and stuff like that. And now it all makes sense. But hopefully you've enjoyed this chat. I wanted to ask you before we end, is there anything we haven't spoken about that you would like to speak about?
I don't know. I think we've covered a lot of things. Like, absolutely. I think, I don't feel like I'm young anymore. Am I young at 32?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I am 32 as well. I think I'm 33 actually.
Yeah, I think I'm 33 this year too. Yeah. It's funny, like I really did not believe that people lost count of their age when they got older, but it is a bit like that. 92.
I'm 91. Yep, you're turning 33 this year.
Yeah, perfect.
And I've just turned 33.
Okay, happy birthday.
We're not old.
Yeah. Well, it's still young, but I feel like I've lived a lot of my life. I've, been through a lot of different things, whether that be business or personal, etc. And it's helped kind of create and shape me to who I am today. And I've still got a lot to give and learn and grow as well. So I think we have covered off a lot of different topics. I think I'm pretty good.
Yeah, I've loved talking to you. And I think even just what you said at the end about like this idea that you've got Town and it's like it's amazing and it's successful and it's your baby, but you know, you're not like married to that being it forever.
Yeah.
I think that that's really cool. That's how I think as well. So
yeah, I think at some point, you know, we definitely want Town to be a legacy brand on the Sunshine Coast. And, you know, my old boss used to say to me, at some point you'll know when it's time for you to step aside and for the people below you that you've been working with to step up, and it's their opportunity, right? And at some point that'll be it for Town.
Yeah.
And at some point Craig and I will want to do something different and probably bigger and bolder and whatever it might be. I know he always gets itchy feet. He kind of jumps around into business ideas all the time. It's probably his longest career he's ever been in. And I love that. And now that we're kind of like this team together, he can create that idea, and I'm there to help reinforce it and bring it to life and push it forward and kick some goals.
I love it. I feel like every Craig needs a Jaymee.
Oh, thank you.
Where can I order mine? Well, yeah, so lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Your schedule's very busy.
Thank you for having me.
Especially after I had to reschedule.
No, that's all right.
No, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
No worries.